We are moving ahead with our next panel, which is on distribution challenges and opportunities in the Indian insurance sector, which has been sponsored by Mantra Labs. Very firstly, I would like to invite our moderator for this session, Mr. Alok Shukla, Senior Vice President, Bharti AXA General Insurance. Can we have a big round of applause to invite him on the stage, please? May I please invite our first panel member, Mr. Manav Gaur, Chief Executive Officer, Monocept Consulting Private Limited. A big round of applause for him. Please help me welcome Satyendra Shrivastava, Partner, Khaitan Legal Associates. May I please invite Gaurav Saxena, Senior Vice President and Head Third Party Distribution, Birla Sun Life Insurance. A big round of applause to invite Simon Phipps, Head of Asia, Global Development and Blockchain, the digital insurer. And last but not the least, may I please invite Mr. Sumit Rai, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Edelweiss Tokyo Life Insurance. Can we have a massive thunder round of applause for all of them? All right, over to the moderator for this impactful and power-packed session. We hope that you enjoy this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. So I was just thinking, what is more difficult than selling insurance? I think it's to keep everyone awake after a good lunch. So I think we have the right guys here. Somebody who can really sell insurance can do anything. So, so what comes to your mind when you think about insurance? Like the calls coming to you and saying, we have this new plan, and you saying, no, sorry, not interested. So interestingly, that's how insurance is perceived, and that's now how it should be perceived. And we insurance guys are doing a lot of good work, and we are trying to make life risk-free for a lot of people. And so today, in this session, what we'll try to cover is that how the landscape of distribution is changing, how the companies have been evolving in this era of technology, in this era of online aggregation, when the customers' know-how is increasing. Now they know what they want and what they don't want. The transparency is increasing. People go online, search for reviews. Social media is increasing. Most of us, including me, we may not go to social media for appreciating anything, but we'll always go for complaining. So that again is something which is changing, and people really take those reviews very seriously. So let's start this interesting session. I'll request Sumit to start it. He is one of the most experienced panelists here. He has been looking at how the insurance landscape has been changing over the time. So I'll request him to share his views, his comments on how the landscape is changing, how we as industry have been evolving in this changing landscape of online aggregation and social media and all. So over to Sumit.
Thanks, Alok. And first of all, thank you everyone for being here, and it's a privilege for me to be here with all of you. It's a very interesting thing. 2 decades almost in the business now that I've spent, and I've seen the industry really change from what was essentially agency recruitment and development business in the early parts of the 2000, well into the first decade of the business. I think all the people who have been in distribution and insurance in between the 2000 to 2010 mostly cut their teeth in insurance on the agency side of the business. And then when I see what's happened in the second decade, I think the world changed very significantly. I think the first big change was the move from the agency side of the business to bank assurance side of the business. The fact that today almost 2/3 of the business in the industry does come from bank assurance, and that in itself was a major change. It also constituted to some degree a shift in relationships from individual relationship between an agent to a customer to a more institutional relationship between a bank and its customers, and the role of insurance as a product rather than as a primary seller. And I think that's the one big shift that we've seen over the last few years. Along with it has come, for a lot of banks, especially the better managed banks, for example, the increase in persistency and therefore customer satisfaction to that extent. In the early days, Banca was often panned as a poor distribution setup with a lot of mis-selling, lots of persistency, grievances and other thing, and I think that has also changed over a period of time. I think the third big thing that bank assurance brought was the advent of data. Because a bank had so much data on its customers, their transactions, and what you could do with it, I think some of the leading bank assurance partners were able to kind of latch onto it a little bit better, create more customized options for customers, be able to target customers better. And I think that journey is still evolving. I don't think we've reached anywhere near the best of where we could be. But increasingly, I see it becoming better every single day. So what you did in Banca in 2012, 13, 14 is very different from what you do in Banca today, including the kind of products and how you pitch it to the customers and all of that. I think that's changed significantly. I think the next wave that's come after Banca, and it's in continuation, is the entire online and how, therefore, that has created a market for protection. Protection, you know, when I started in this industry for the first 10, 12 years, most people believe protection was a very, very niche kind of business. You didn't have any sales in it, customers didn't want it, people only want savings, and we've seen that change. And I think online has had a big contribution to make in how customers perceive term insurance and protection as the core of life insurance over a period of time. I have seen that change significantly. And with the increasing penetration of internet in this country, with Jio doing what it has done in terms of creating mass internet access across the country, I think the one thing that has always described insurance is a slight degree of opaqueness. Customers don't fully understand products. I think we are beginning to see the first shifts towards simpler things, things that customers understand easier, and things that are more suited to what they want to do. I think the first thing started with term. I don't think anybody ever imagined that term would become such a... Physical channels have followed the online channels in selling term is how I see it. Online created term and physical channels have followed. I think we will see similar things. So there are already some interesting experiments that, you know, people like Ola and others have done with some of the life insurers. And I think those trends will only accentuate. Long-term contracts to becoming medium to shorter-term contracts is something that I think will work more and more as the move towards simplicity so that customers can understand and buy on their own is something that I think will also accentuate. On the general insurance side, I think some of the progress that has happened has been tremendous. The ability to buy, you know, some of the advertising that you see now, the ability to buy travel insurance just as you're boarding the plane is something that couldn't have happened. And I think we've completely changed the scenario from there. So what it has done is, I think, it has democratized information. Distribution today is defined by democratized information that is available to customer. I saw a statistic somewhere, almost 2/3 of all customers that buy even in the offline channels today are doing some degree of research online. And I think that is what is going to define insurance as we go forward from here. The more availability of information, therefore greater transparency, therefore simpler products, are, I think, some of the inescapable trends that we are moving towards, and they will accentuate. And I think in some of these, India might actually well lead the way. India might be ahead of the curve of the rest of the globe in some of this, partly because of the nature of our demographics, partly because of a large part of this country today still does not buy insurance because affordability is to some extent an issue, and I think some of that will change as we go along with better platforms being available. So we've seen, like I said, in 2 decades, I've seen very exciting times, I've seen a lot of change. And my suspicion is that the change is actually just starting, that we will see a lot more happening over the next 5 to 10 years. I think we will be in for some very, very different changes. The stuff that we haven't imagined so far also might start happening. So hopefully some of this panel discussion will kind of talk about that.
Thank you, Sumit. Taking cue from what Sumit has said, democratizing information, shifting towards simpler products, customer having a better understanding of the products. So Gaurav, what has been your experience around that? How the customer expectation is changing in the changing times?
Yeah, thank you, Alok. The way I look at things is that competition is not with the insurance industry. So we are not fighting here within the insurance industry for our insurance product. My sense is that Competition for us will come from industries which own customers. So largely, wherever you have large pool of customers, those guys will be able to provide insurance to them, and it's going to be very significant. Or organizations which can cater to the last mile delivery. These are the two set of organizations which will emerge largely, and they will create a huge amount of disruption in the marketplace. It can be an insurance industry, it can be a banking, or it can be maybe a payment industry, or maybe some other industry. Today, they will come back and hit us very, very heavily. Also, the customer preferences and the customer demands are changing. There used to be an era, as Sumit rightly pointed out, that in 2000 when the distribution was led by agents, so every agent used to think about his renewal commission for 25 years, 40 years. Today, customer is not looking at the life insurance cover or savings for 20 years, 25 years, 40 years. They are looking at maybe, can I get an insurance while I travel from maybe a point A to point B? Can I get an insurance for a month? Can I get an insurance for a year? Can I get an insurance for 2 years? So all these sachet insurances are going to come in. They are already in under development stage. They are already available with a lot of organization on the group platform. We will soon see it coming on an individual platform and through an online medium, so that the entire distribution chain is cut and the customer has the power in terms of buying the product from the company directly. Another big shift on this, on customers, on product, the third big shift will be in terms of how the customer looks at insurance. Now, customer looking at insurance, is he looking at a life insurance as a life insurance tool? Or is he looking at a life insurance as a savings kind of a tool? Till so many years, life insurance has been looked at as a tool or as a medium of a small saving instrument. So people used to save small for long term and they used to accumulate. Then today the shift is happening that they are actually valuing the human life. So today they are ascertaining my human life value. So my human life value is 10 crores. I am going to buy a life insurance cover of 10 crores. Tomorrow they might recalibrate that and look at situation wherein possibly my retirement life is X. So can I give or can I prepone my retirement through this kind of a product? So the entire landscape of product is changing, the entire landscape of customer preferences is changing, and the entire landscape of the entire insurance industry is changing. So today, as we speak, and I'm really fortunate to come and stand up and speak in front of you, but I must tell you that we are in the most disruptive space today. Every year, every minute, in fact, in Silicon Valleys, there are a lot of technologists sitting there and trying to break the biggest problems of industries. So any industry which has got archaic processes, any industry which has a higher customer onboarding, any industry which has a longer gestation for customer servicing or delivery will get disruptive. So I think I must congratulate each one of you that our lives in the next 2 years, 5 years are not going to be same. It's going to be very, very different for what it used to be 5 years ago or what it used to be 10 years ago. So I think all of us need to embrace that change, and all of us need to work towards that kind of product and processes.
Thank you, Gaurav. So, very rightly said, we are in the most disruptive phase right now. Things are changing, and data is becoming more and more important. Technology is becoming even more important. When we are talking about sachet insurance, maybe the way we have been distributing insurance product till day may not work in that scenario. So I think, Simon, what would be your take on how technology, data analytics, AI, ML, blockchain, how all these buzzwords which we keep on hearing, how this will disrupt the industry or how it's already doing in some of the parts of the world?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you acknowledge all the buzzwords because I lose track of it and I'm kind of in this space. So, I mean, just to reflect on some of the messages from this morning and my fellow panelists, you know, we're in a $5 trillion industry. Right? In Europe, insurance penetration is 7%. In Asia, the average is 2%. In India, it's 3.5%. There's a huge sort of latent potential for our industry to grow, right? And there's some big demographic opportunities and socio-economic drivers for change and positive growth, which we know about: rising populations, the growth of the middle class, increasing protection gaps, aging populations, increasing catastrophic events, etc. So these are all positives, but against these positives, there are a whole bunch of negatives for our sector, not least of which is on a global stage we're the least trusted sector of any sector in the world when it comes to consumer views. And actually satisfaction levels with service and particularly digital experience is the lowest of all the sectors around the world, and certainly in Europe. And beyond that, there are a whole bunch of other challenges, right? Insurance is fundamentally boring for us as customers, right? It's not particularly exciting. It still tends to be sold rather than bought. We'll get onto that in a little bit. So despite all these opportunities for growth, there are some big structural challenges that the industry has got. And the good news, in my opinion, our opinion, I hope we all share this view, is InsurTech. So InsurTech in its broadest sense is really the key that opens Pandora's box to harness these new opportunities, but also to address some of the challenges. And at the Digital Insurer, we tend to look at how technology is being deployed at two levels. At one level, I guess we've got improving today. So looking at the existing world we work in of insurance and how technology can be used to improve the value chain of activities within a traditional insurance company. And of course, distribution is part of that, but others as well: administration, claims, underwriting, etc. The other side of the coin is kind of reinventing tomorrow, finding new ways of doing insurance. And there are plenty of examples we can talk about where technology is being deployed here as well. Some of the more topical ones: ecosystems, you know, health and wellness platforms, etc. What's interesting for me, and maybe many of us in the room will recognize this well, about 3 or 4 years ago when InsurTech first popped up as a buzzword, one of the buzzwords, all the hype and all the interest was on reinventing tomorrow. All these new technology firms thought they were going to knock over the big insurers, find new ways of doing things that would solve the pain points, get rid of the incumbents. 4 years later, funnily enough, most of the incumbents are still here. 90% of the deal flow for InsurTechs is on the improving today, not reinventing tomorrow, because generally the market is quite sticky, right? So that will be a broad point, I'd say, around InsurTech, in that the hype cycle's kind of come off a little bit, and I think we're seeing now much more focus amongst the newer InsurTechs on working with the market. So that's quite exciting and interesting sort of evolution of this technology space. When it comes to specific technologies, some of the things that were only invented recently are kind of becoming quite vanilla now in BAU, right? Cloud technology, RPA is pretty much, you know, just get on with it and do it. 2 or 3 of the bigger things that I think we see that have the biggest potential for the industry, but probably are the furthest out in terms of actually delivering that potential, are AI, genomics, and blockchain. We could debate others, IoT being one, but you know, those 3 fundamentally are really big things, right? But they're at a very, very early stage, and the capability gap for insurers to actually understand them, deploy them, and leverage them is huge. So as with many things, I guess, you know, the best things are quite far out there and difficult to get hold of. My last point, I guess, before passing on in these opening remarks, is just around our industry at the moment is quite a physical world, right? So we've got lots of people, we've got lots of offices, lots of infrastructure, and that's understandable because we've grown up for hundreds of years. Lots of people come to us as the digital insurer, and we're a B2B platform, I hasten to add. We don't sell directly, but lots of people come to us and ask us to subscribe to the view that agency is dead. And we absolutely don't subscribe to that. We actually think that the existing footprint is going to evolve in terms of the insurance sector, for sure. It's going to be more technology enabled, so agents will become more digitally enabled, more omni-focused, sales and servicing, etc. But there's a huge new part of our market which has been elusive up until now, and technology is opening this up for the first time, and that's micro-insurance and digital-first businesses that are able to make money out of micro-insurance. I think our view is that historically, most companies that have tried micro-insurance have kind of struggled to make it work using old legacy systems and kind of putting new models on old systems. There are companies now that are selling completely new clean tech stacks that are geared purely to making money out of very small bits of insurance. And this opens up a whole new world of opportunity, new market space. And I think the really, really interesting thing here is that what this is going to result is it's a bit like, I used the analogy yesterday, the number of photographs around the world in the last 20 years has gone up exponentially. The thing that made that happen was smartphones. We've all now got a smartphone. That means we can all buy little bits of insurance. So we think in the next 10 years, whilst the premium volume won't track the transaction volume, the level of transactions in insurance is going to go up exponentially in the next 5 to 10 years. And obviously that presents some interesting distribution questions around how that may happen. So that's a few comments from me. Yep.
Thank you, Simon. So, yeah, so InsurTech is what is really catching up. As Simon rightly said, it's a Pandora's box, and it can go either ways. And with AI, blockchain, data, we want to transact more online, but we have become more sensitive towards our privacy also. So will we be able to create a right balance around that? And Satyen, what would be your view from the legal perspective of this, that with the blockchain coming in, will data privacy be an issue? Or how as industry will need to be ready to handle these issues?
Thank you, Alok. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me try and wake you up. See, I'm the only lawyer on the panel, and I'm not an industry person, so I will be the spoiler, the dampener. There's a very interesting line about India and the regulation that I'm always reminded of whenever we're talking about futuristic things, and I'm digitally challenged. Whatever you say about India, the opposite is equally true, okay? And, whenever we talk about things like artificial intelligence, InsurTech, FinTech, data, the only thing that comes to my mind is that, yes, all of this is great, okay? Anything that helps the industry is fine, and even the regulators would understand that, the government would understand that, and so on. But whether we have worked to create the regulatory regime, the regulatory architecture, in a way that this data sharing, because at the end of the day, when we were having this discussion, I think Gaurav simplified AI in a way that it is a data repository, which can be seamlessly be shared, right? Now, not many of us remember that 2 years ago, the Indian Supreme Court declared that privacy is a fundamental right. Coupled with that, we had the Sri Krishna Commission report, which has proposed the new data protection law. As we sit here, the law is currently with the select committee and will take shape in the months to come. But what essentially will be required is that all the stakeholders, which is not only the insurance regulator, but the banking regulator, RBI, the capital markets regulator, and the government will need to sit together, maybe with the industry, to figure out as to whether the current regime is good enough to ensure that the right of privacy is balanced with the new emerging technologies that are at use. Secondly, if some of you have had a chance to look at the proposal, the data protection bill, it talks about something like the right to be forgotten, right? So if I'm a customer, I have shared my data with either my bank, my mutual fund, or my insurer, and I direct them that, okay, I want you to forget me, okay? After maybe 3 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever is the statutory limit, how will that data how will that data be figure out in this larger scheme of artificial intelligence, blockchain, when data is shared between different stakeholders, which are responsible to different regulators. So the point is that, whenever in the past, what has happened that many times the governments and the regulators were looking the other way when the revolution was at their doorstep. And we are in a similar situation that, there is a kind of a revolution that is happening around us. And it is important that the different stakeholders, which is industry and the regulators, plus the government, they sit together and look at how they can make it work.
Sure. Thanks, Atin. So yeah, so revolution is what is actually happening, and so we have right to privacy, and at the same time we have right to be forgotten. And so Manav, my question to you is that in this revolution era, I'll say revolution of data, revolution of technology, what's your view how technology is enabling us, how these AI, blockchain, whether these will be helpful in this revolution or whether they'll act as a dampener?
Thank you. Technology as such has enabled insurance or anything else. It's reached the remotest corner of this country and the world. Geo's phenomenal rise was possible because of the technology, because they were able to do eKYC, which our Supreme Court struck down, unfortunately, but hopefully they will be back. So when we are looking at the technology as an enabler, right, we also need to look at how, per unit transaction cost, how that technology is impacting that, right? We are talking about session insurance, we are talking about micro insurance. If the cost of delivering that is going through your traditional systems, then obviously that won't work. I mean, you have to come up with newer ways of underwriting that or newer ways of issuing that. Today, in our country, there are two types of core systems. And if everything has to go through those core systems, then they become the bottleneck for enabling your micro insurance and such. Coming back to the AI and blockchain, I'm still not a fan of blockchain because blockchain isn't enabling anything new which is not being done today. Although it's a controversial topic, we can have our passions flowing in. But I think it's a long way to go, given that there are data privacy issues. Blockchain fundamentally puts the trust from the institution, from the person to the technology. And how many of us fundamentally can trust the technology, right? I mean, Facebook is still stealing our information. Google is still stealing our information. We know that we have data privacy laws, but there's nothing we can do. We still rely on those technologies to sell our own products, let's say remarketing, where it's all about stealing the cookies and following the journey over the web or the mobile and such. So it's a dual-edged sword of, and then obviously the role of regulations do come into picture, especially on a technology like blockchain, which mandates sharing of the data. AI, on the other hand, is an enabler, right? We are working with several insurance companies on enabling AI in underwriting, AI in claims, AI in policy issuance and such, where the transaction, the amount of transaction that a human is able to do, AI is able to do much better. So it's an enabler to business efficiencies. So a lot of these micro insurance and such may be driven through pure play AI-based engines or pure play digital engines. And InsurTech, I mean, yes, it's pretty much real. How it will shape up, in what form, we never know, but you buy a IRCTC train ticket, they are selling insurance for 90 paise. It's less than a rupee, right? So if your transaction cost is about a 1 paise or 2 paise, you're not going to make money on that, And traditional systems will not be sufficient in that regard.
You want to win?
You want me to jump in on this? Okay, as I've got blockchain in my title, I feel I'm obliged to respond slightly on this. I do agree with one or two of your points on blockchain in regard to it being some time off before its value can be proved, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. However, I do fundamentally disagree with the lack of kind of potential and sort of view that AI is an enabler that blockchain isn't. So let's pick on this example of flight insurance, which I think you mentioned earlier. So AXA launched Fizzy last year, right, which is a Ethereum smart contract-enabled travel insurance policy. The uptake on that has been a little bit mixed, and I don't think they necessarily launched it to shoot the lights out on new business sales. But the interesting thing about that product is, if you look at travel insurance, 2/3 of potential claims don't get claimed for by customers on travel insurance because it's too much hassle. The opportunity cost of making the claim is higher than the claim amount itself. So the industry gets away with overcharging and underpaying on a significant number of people around the world. It's actually not delivering on its promise of serving customers in a moment of need. Blockchain enables that whole end-to-end process to be automated in terms of linking data across multiple parties to auto-pay, right, when you have a travel insurance claim without all the hassle. Now, that's just one example, and there will be many more, and I'll give you one other interesting one. But for me, this is just an example of how the customer can benefit. There are many instances where actually you could just do things with a new database and Excel spreadsheet between one or two entities. But when you've got multiple parties that all need to work off the same single point of truth, blockchain does come into its own. And a really interesting example I'll throw out there, maybe we can talk about it. So the IOTA blockchain, there's a guy called Terry Shane based in Canada who runs something called Biotosphere, and he's developed a proof of concept called Insure My Car. And in a Tesla, they've put technology that when you walk up to a parked Tesla, it's insured by insurer A. When you start the engine, it moves to insurer B because it's in active mode, and insurer B provides the best rate for that status of the vehicle. As you move through different speed ranges, you move to different insurers depending on which one is the most attractive rate for that particular driving condition, and et cetera. Now, this, as a customer, to me, is quite appealing, right? This is the convergence of telematics and aggregators. Right? Actually, as a customer, one of my biggest concerns with motor is, am I being fairly charged for my usage? And have I got the best provider at any point in time? Well, that POC takes away both those concerns for me. Tesla is sorting out my insurance for me. It's ensuring I get the best rate for the way I'm driving, and that's my choice. So for me, this is a great example of how the customer can benefit from these new technologies. I appreciate for the industry it's hugely challenging at one level because it blows all your pricing models out the window. Most motor insurers are working on annual contracts, right? So this POC is very challenging. But it's just an example of the sort of thing that could fundamentally change the industry. And of course, the really interesting thing is not a motor. It's when you start thinking about how that technology with blockchain at the back end can be deployed through devices, wearables, to health and life insurance, and fairly pricing other risks that we live with, right? You want to respond on that? Or should I? Okay. Does that mean I won that? Round one, I've won. Okay.
So thank you, Simon. Thank you for jumping in and sharing these interesting examples. So these are the futures. Some of them may work, some of them may not work, but that's something as industry we need to try and test these examples in various scenarios, and let's see how we can progress from there. So I think here at DIAS, everyone agrees that the time is changing. We are at disruptive phase. Change has just started. And InsurTech is next up thing. But then as an industry, what is stopping us? What can we do to speeden up this process of transitioning from a pre-technology era where everything was manual and driven by agents to the technology era where we can do a lot of things online and we can improve the customer experience? Because as Simon said, this is one of the least trusted product segment. And particularly, one, we have earned that reputation. Two, when you are buying a car, you are getting a car. When you're buying insurance, you are just getting a paper. And you have to trust that guy, the agent or the insurance company, that whenever you are in problem, that guy will come up and rescue you. And it's slightly tough to kind of visualize that. So there's there's no, you're not getting anything when you're buying insurance, and at times when you keep on buying, a lot of people, like including me also, we think every year we just get premium, we are not getting back anything from that. It's just a waste of money. So what can we do as an industry to speeden up this process, to improve the customer experience, to kind of change the journey of customer experience overall in this era of technology? So Sumit, will you like to share your views on that?
So I think it's probably a little bit of a misnomer to say we've not speeded up. I think the change in the last 3-4 years has been significant, and across board. If you look at analytics, and I don't really understand what big data and all the fuss about it is all about, but around analytics and what information is available, the things that you're able to do as an insurer, for example, the risk controls that I can put in place today and therefore give better service to my better customers and be able to eliminate their losses that would have come in the past from also having acquired some poor customers, provide better returns to those customers. I think that power has increased significantly, and I think most of the insurers are leveraging it amazingly. I think what it will also do, it's also already doing to some extent, is like I kind of mentioned it earlier a little bit, in a country where a significant part of the population is still undercovered, we're at 3.5% penetration on insurance in a GDP. I think it will allow a lot more people to participate in the process of insurance. That, on account of distribution expense and inability to reach out and all of that, was a big challenge in the past. I think technology allows us to alleviate some of those challenges. And again, I see a lot of work that is happening. Maybe it's taking longer than we had anticipated. But I don't think insurers are oblivious to the need and to the opportunity that is available, both ways. And the third piece, and this is the piece that I think we often miss, what technology is already doing, and I think will make it even better, is your ability to interact better with the customer, understand their needs better, offer a better solution. I think we will move to intense customization as we go forward from here. We're already seeing some part of it, but at an earlier point of time, if you go back 15, 20 years ago, the best guys were the old LIC guys because they could combine many different products from LIC and give you a solution that kind of took care of your needs. But that came with experience, that came with a lot of, over a period of times. Today, technology allows a relative novice to be able to do the same thing and create a similarly powerful solution to the, and I think some companies are already deploying it. I think that trend will only accelerate as we go forward from here. So what it is also doing, and a lot of people say technology will take away the face-to-face selling mode. I actually disagree. I believe technology will help face-to-face become far superior, more satisfying to the customer, and therefore create a more powerful life insurance industry where the seller, as Simon mentioned, we are a distrusted industry. I think we'll move from being distrusted to a lot more trusted. I think insurance industry today is kind of aware of all of this. We are, let's not forget, we are an industry with a 200-year-old legacy. 200-year legacy comes with its own hobble steps of things that don't allow you to move as quickly as you can. But I see a lot of movement. I'm seeing it across board. Some parts of the industry are showing more of it. So I'm actually very positive that what technology will currently do is actually help distribution, customer service, and your ability to keep your customer with you a lot better, and therefore create a happier set of customers who will find more amenable products that they need, products that they would like to buy, and bring those onto the table. So I personally believe that there is work happening. Some part of the speed can access. I remember 4 years ago, I had thought of something which was quite radical in terms of using AI and other stuff. That kind of technology is still not available, but insurers are thinking about some very radical thing. It might take some time to come through, but I think it will. So I'm very optimistic.
Thank you, Sumit.
Just to add what Sumit said, Sumit has actually brought in a very, very interesting topic. One is trust, and the other is customer know-how. So today, what industry is grappling with is, do we actually know our customer? That's one of the questions every day when we get up and go to office. We actually struggle with this question. Now, as a sales guy, our distributors don't know whether they know the customer. As operation guys, we ourselves don't know whether we know our customer. As risk guys, we don't know whether we know our customer or not. So while there's something called like KYC, but to the real challenge to the industry is that are we adequately knowing our customer enough and his change of preferences? And we are able to build our products and processes to his need. That's one. Second bit is in terms of this whole issue around trust. And trust is not something wherein we can get up and go for an ad and tell everybody that from tomorrow onward we are the most trusted industry. No, trust actually gets created over a various touch points wherein the customer comes to us, interacts with us, and kinds of believes in us or disbelieves in us. So the entire huge ecosystem of trust and the entire huge ecosystem of mis-selling actually comes in from a perspective that the customer does not know the product per se. So is the trust coming through complex product? Is the trust not happening through a huge amount of archaic processes or legacy distribution system? So the entire gamut of trust, I guess it's our responsibility. The more we simplify our products, processes for our customers, the more trust we will be able to create. The more we know our customers, we will be able to create more products for them. So I think my take is more than the distribution, more than the technology, I guess the connect between the customer and the organization is something which needs to have a more meaningful engagement.
Thank you, Gaurav. So I guess we are running out of time. So Satyen, can you quickly, in 15 seconds or 30 seconds, sum up if you have anything, closing remarks?
Yeah, I will just take 10 seconds more in this, the knowing your customer bit. I had a slight disagreement. So, as somebody who talks about law on the privacy side, I would, as a customer, ask you as to why do you need to know? We are not in a relationship, right? If you are a life insurer, why do you need to know my preference in terms of my sexual orientation or otherwise? So the idea is that, and this is something which I think we will need to discuss as we kind of talk about blockchain, sharing of data across stakeholders, across companies, across industries. This is where the government, the new regime, and the regulators will need to get together, get into a dialogue, and look at how we can balance out the different interests of different stakeholders.
Thank you, Satyen. Manav, any closing remark? Just 30 seconds.
Technology is an enabler. It is where knowing your customer will come into picture. Technology will enable that. Customer 360 is something that almost all insurers are looking at. So I think technology will solve your problems.
Very, very briefly, strategy beats execution in a digital world. Right? If you want to know more on that, you can go to the McKinsey article. But strategy beats execution in a digital world, so make sure your business strategy is clear. All the best companies we love they've got inspirational CEOs that have got forward-looking ranges beyond 3 years and all their teams behind them. So that's a challenge in terms of executing the strategy. And the third and final point I'll make is, it's great to hear all this around customer. We're all customers. Something strange happens in our industry. We go into work on a Monday morning through the front door and then the customers are outside. But we're all customers, right? We know what we like about Google, about Uber, about Apple. So just start knocking off the pain points that we see inside our companies that annoy us, and we'll be better than the rest. That would be my final comment.
Sure. Thank you, Simon. So I guess with that, we come to closure of this interesting panel. So I'd like to thank all the panelists for their views. I guess we all learned a lot from this discussion. So thank you so much.
Thank you. A big round of applause to all our esteemed and eminent panelists for this wonderful and insightful and highly informative session, for making it so interesting. Having said that, may I please invite Mr. Parag Sharma, Chief Executive Officer from Mantra Labs, for kindly doing the honors and giving away the certificates to all our esteemed panelists. Could we please have you on the stage, sir? Very firstly, our first panelist, Mr. Sumit Rai, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Edelweiss Tokyo Life Insurance. A big round of applause for them. Thank you. Our second panelist, Mr. Gaurav Saxena, Senior Vice President and Head Third Party Distribution, Birla Sun Life Insurance. Our third panel member, Mr. Simon Phipps, Head of Asia, Global Development and Blockchain, the Digital Insurer. Our next panel member, Mr. Satyendra Shrivastava, Partner, Khaitan Legal Associates. Our next panelist, Mr. Manav Gaur, CEO, Monostep Consulting Private Limited. And finally, our moderator, Mr. Alok Shukla, Senior Vice President, Bharti AXA General Insurance, for pulling off a brilliant session. Thank you so much.